2,
Yeah, we've got the table in it again, have you?
Alright, it's Mark Aldridge here again. I'd like to talk to you about some of the dodgy practices at cabinet election time. Now, elections are very important. I mean, they're the only choice we have, and the only little bit of input we have into the future of our nation, in particular our state, is our right to vote. Now, I take that particularly seriously, and I have been in elections for about 14 years. Some of those elections I haven't particularly put my name out there and put posters up and run around and tried to win. What's been important is that I've actually ran basically to have a voice for things that concern me that happen in the community. What we need to be very pertinent and worried about is that electoral law is written by the major parties, Labor and Liberal. Now, the fact that they can write the laws and change the laws means that they can actually have structural bias in those laws. The concern for you all really is that the system of democracy, or our elections in South Australia, are particularly important to us. It's our input into who governs and what happens in terms of our state's future and our children's future. Now, lots of dodgy things go on, and I'm here to let you know about some of those so you can be concerned about it. When I went to run this year, the cost to me used to be $450, and I used to have 2 nominations. The major parties in December, just before this year, brought out new laws to make that particularly hard, and what that meant was that I then had to run with a friend, and I had to come up with $6,000 just to put my name on the ballot paper. On top of that, I had to get extensive nominations, more than the major parties have ever had to get. So I've had to get upwards of 700 nominations to make sure that I could run, and I managed to achieve that because I have a lot of support. A lot of the other parties haven't. The Democrats won't be able to run, the Motoring Enthusiast Party won't be able to run, Smokers' Rights won't be able to run, the Hemp Party and various others. It is not for our government to decide who runs elections. It's up to the people themselves to decide by way of their vote as to who runs. So I'd like you to know the sort of things that do go on that are particularly important. If you receive a postal ballot application in the mail, you may find that's come from a major party. So if you apply for a postal ballot through them, when you return it, it won't go to the Electoral Commission, it will go to them. Having any political party handle ballot papers or ballot paper applications is extremely dangerous. Other issues that have popped up over the years, going back to 2010 as a sample, is where the Labor Party registered the opposition leader's name, Isabel Redmond back then, as a reply paid address. So where you were filling in forms and applications or providing personal information to who you thought was the Liberal Party, it was actually going to the Labor Party's head office. These sorts of issues are particularly dangerous. They undermine democracy, they undermine your right to a fair and free vote. I took the 2010 election outcome to court because I care. I risked my house. I didn't do it for publicity. I did it because I care about the fact that I want my children and the people of my state to have a fair right to a free vote. During that election, lots of things went wrong. About 77,000 names went missing off the electoral roll. These weren't people that hadn't enrolled. These were people that had voted all their life and lived at the same address. I received reports, and numerous reports and affidavits, showing that people were turning up finding their name not on the electoral roll, but seeing the names of parents or loved ones that had passed on, and seeing ticks next to the name that they'd actually voted. When we got some information from the Electoral Commissioner while I was in the court, over 16,500 ballot papers just simply went missing. That's a massive number for South Australia. In WA there's a re-election going ahead now for the upper house for the Senate because 1,300 went missing. Why wasn't there a new election when 16,500 ballot papers went missing here in South Australia? Over 6,500 ballot papers were struck out for being dodgy. Thousands of ballot papers were supposedly signed by multiple people, so there was multiple voting issues. What you have to remember that South Australia's great progress is handing you a pencil and a piece of paper when you go to do an election, and then expecting that to be considered what they call democratic. They don't even ask you for identity. So if you'd like, you can go from booth to booth all over South Australia and vote multiple times. It is illegal to do that, but there's no one watching. So it is really important that these sorts of things are brought out. Now you will start to see little bits trickle out in the media, and you have already. There's people out there already putting stuff in your letterbox that is signed by somebody else that's fake and dodgy. You will find they will attend polling booths and they will hand out dodgy how to vote information. These are the types of tactics that the major party use to try and scope your vote. What is important, and the only thing you can do to make sure your vote is valid, is to get off your butts, look online and find out who's running. And if you want change, we are not going to be able to change who holds government. It's going to be a Labor or Liberal government regardless, because they have written law over the years to make sure of that. But what you can do is vote differently in the upper house. You can vote for people like myself. There's several other minor parties and independents that are particularly good. Vote for them in the upper house. Get some checks and balances in the upper house so that we can stop these dodgy practices. At the moment, if they want to bring in new laws, which they do every year after an election, all they need is the Labor and Liberal to decide upon that, and they can do it. If Labor or Liberal take the lower house and they have the upper house members, they can do that to you as well. So you need to make sure that you have some checks and balances in the upper house. People that do care. There has never been in history any minor party or any independent that has voted in favour of changes to the electoral law that undermine your right to a free and fair vote. The only people that feel they need to do that are the major parties. So please, please, do your best this election. Make sure you are enrolled. If you turn up to a polling booth, make sure that you are handed your ballot papers. Take a pen with you so you know that no one's going to tamper with them. Fill out your paper and put it in a box. And if you see anything dodgy, report it. If anything goes wrong, report it, because this is all we have as citizens, our right to vote. So we do not want that being taken away by people with self-interest. Thank you.